world feels a bit toxic and blah these days, doesn't it? The same old people coming up with the same old solutions for big problems that still don't work. We need to change the game. Well, welcome to Women Advancing. Join me, host Kate Byrne, in this dynamic bi-weekly podcast, bringing together female founders, funders, and thought leaders. Listen to the people driving change, how they got there, how you can help, and yep, how you might just be the next one to advance. Proof that all ships rise with women at the helm. That's what happens when Women Advance with Kate Byrne. Hey everyone, it's your host Kate Byrne with Women Advancing. So what happens when you mix AI plus purpose and the audacity to build something that's radically different, never been seen before, that presents female forward, that's for women, by women, and informed with data all about women? Well, you get a platform like Uplevyl, and you get a leader like Shubhi. On this episode of Women Advancing, I get to sit down with Shubhi, who's a brilliant force behind Uplevyl, to talk about what it means to create a technology that actually centers around women across industries and life stages and experiences, all with data that is specifically about them. We dive into everything from ethical AI and conscious leadership to what women are really asking for now, which is a huge lens into where we're headed. We also explore the messy truth behind building with limited resources and high stakes, what it means to lead with both data and gut, and why the best platforms don't just serve, they listen. We also talk about a few big future jobs coming down the road. Mainly, not necessarily the sexiest, but cyber cleaning, anyone? This one's for anyone who's ever looked at the status quo and thought, we could do better than this. And I'm going to say, we can, and Shubhi is. So jump on in and let me know what you think. Shubhi Rao, founder and CEO of Uplevyl. Thank you so much for joining Women Advancing. We're so excited to have you today.
Thank you for having me. A pleasure. I'm looking forward to this.
I cannot wait for all of you listeners. Well, just wait till you hear what Shubhi and Jackie Zahner, and there's a whole host of characters in Uplevyl that are doing amazing things that you're going to be so excited to hear about. But before we go there, I wanted to start with you, because especially with something like Uplevyl, that comes after experience, deep lived experience, and a clear understanding and sort of an overview of what exists, what's been, what should be, and what's missing in between. So I'd love for you to share a bit about your journey and how you kind of got to where you are right now.
Yeah, I think you actually captured it perfectly in the sense that you don't just roll out of bed one day and just show up here and go, oh, I am going to be a founder, right? I always tell people, actually, I'm one of those folks who did not become a founder or entrepreneur by design, but it's the byproduct of what I wanted to do. And there are two elements to it, at least for me. One is a combination of the attributes you have, right? So
Right.
in my case, I'm a problem solver, I'm a builder, I like numbers, right? So when you start to think about the pieces that are within you, that's one set of data, if you will. And then there's all those experiences that you've had along. And, I think we all as humans tend to look at the world through the lens that you're most familiar with or
Right.
or have the strongest bias for. And so when you combine those together, and then there's a third piece, right, which is, okay, what did I do from an academic perspective and what was my training all about?
Right.
Trained to be a technologist, practiced as a technologist, combined that with finance, ended up working for very large organizations from Ford to PwC to Tesco to Google Alphabet in the US, in London for 10 years, right? So lots of different experiences across different sectors, but at the same time, lots of different common denominators. One of the biggest common denominator from personally was that I always straddled finance and technology projects. So I had my day job being pure finance, but I also did a lot of fintech related projects.
Hmm.
And some of them were small and some of them were large. Some of them were internal. Some of them ended up being external projects. And it was really when I was in California working for Google Alphabet that, and I was working on some pretty good sized fintech projects, and also having that responsibility to manage a $120 billion portfolio, and where we were making the investments, right? So back then, and this is, we're talking, like 16, 17, etc., where
Wow.
you're beginning to see where is there's so much investment going in AI. And today, now, of course, AI has become just such a common part of our vocabulary. But 5, 6 years ago, although we lived in this world of AI, it was sort of removed from us.
Exactly. We didn't have the people, it's been in our lives, but people were less aware of it.
Yeah, Spotify, Netflix, Amazon, right? So, but we were not interacting directly as
Correct.
through
Correct.
generative AI. Of course, has been a big game changer in that sense. But it got me thinking, wait, if AI is going to be such a big part of humanity, then where is gender data?
Yeah.
And because in the end, AI and the algorithms are only as good as its raw material, and it has one single raw material, which is data. And so, anyway, long story short, here we are where I decided that since you cannot just go buy gender data, and I have the ability to go away and build both gender data sets and a technology platform as an application layer. And I wanted to fix this problem because
Right.
before it becomes a problem, was to go away and start to build this gender data set. So that's one element of it, the gender data set and the application. And for me, the first application was, how do we support women professionally, personally, and financially? Because, again, this comes back from my own personal experiences, right? I don't live in this little silo. It's not like I go to work and I can just pitch all my personal financial responsibility somewhere else. And it's all this whole baggage I carry with me, and I take that baggage all the way back home, right?
Right.
So, but we need to be supported across all those three dimensions if you're really going to rise in our lives and our careers and our wealth, etc. And so the first gender data set that we built, a first party, came from working with hundreds and hundreds of women like yourself, if you will, with physicians, lawyers, psychologists, corporate board members, like women who have deep domain expertise to help us across those various topics that hit
Right.
personal and financial. And that then was like, okay, well, what are we going to use this data? Like, what's the first use case? And the first use case for me was, well, we really need to partner with organizations that convene women. And it could be corporates. They bring women together for their ERGs or,
Right.
the women employee population. And then there are women organizations that are like just professional networking organizations. And then there's, nonprofits, right? But the US alone, there might be 20,000 plus such organizations.
Right.
We need to be, if we want to really, really accelerate of gender parity, then in this day and age, technology has to be a partner. We can
Exactly.
be doing it the way we do it, which is, let's use websites, let's use a plethora of tools. Those tools don't talk to each other. A lot of dependency on human labor. Like that doesn't work in today's world.
Right.
So here we are to really power those women's organizations through technology, but technology that's powered by gender data sets.
So, oh my gosh, there's two specific directions I kind of want to go in a little bit. One is leadership, and then the other is obviously gender, sort of the mashup, if you will, of tech and gender. What I think I'm going to do first is I'm going to start with the leadership piece. And the reason is because I think that's going to inform, especially the way I'm going to ask this next question. It's informed how you've started and how you're actually leading yourself. So, you made reference to you have an amazing CV, a global CV at that has these extraordinary companies. Now, having been in leadership roles across all these Fortune 500 companies, what did you learn that you're actually intentionally leaving behind when you're building your own company? Like, what's the special sizzle that you realize, you know what? That's such a misconception. It's wrong. We're not going to, we can end this cycle right here, right now.
Yeah. And maybe COVID was a big catalyst for this. But of
Mhm.
course, being a woman and a mother and my share of unpaid work, I think this whole paradigm that you gotta have an office, you gotta have humans come in. I know and there is no perfect answer. I get it that, you know, there's something to be said when you have humans together in a space. But I will tell you that, in my case at least, I worked for very large organizations. Just because I went to the office every single day, I knew my little unit, but I don't even think I knew who was on the opposite side of the building on my own floor, let alone, up, on in the building, let alone on the massive Ford campus, for example, or a
Right.
massive Google campus, or a Tesco campus, or the PwC campus. No clue, right? So yes, did I know my immediate team and my immediate function? Of course, right? But how much time did I really spend physically interacting with them? And I also feel like you lose out on the best because the way I build up level is really getting the best talent. Like one of our data researchers, she's in Germany, and we have one of our AI colleagues who's in Canada. Then we have a pretty good, set of folks that are India based, but they're not in one office. They're all across India. And yet there is a connective tissue through our culture that brings us together across our mission. Right. And
Right.
another thing that I've also seen that I think we have learned along the way is when you build a company like this, it actually puts quite a bit on each employee to,
Oh, sure.
right? It actually makes it more transparent in a funny way that it's going to either work or it's not going to work. Right? Versus when you are in, I think sometimes in an office building and you're going for, you can have some
You can
folks
hide kind of.
hide them kind of
I agree.
exactly, right? And
I
so
agree.
so I feel like, in this day and age, this is if we're talking about AI on one side, and that's the part I don't understand. Like AI transcends everything,
Yeah.
and yet we're saying, well, we can't transcend a workforce. They all have to come into the office every day. Like that just feels so counterintuitive to me.
It's very archaic,
Yeah,
actually. Talk about brick and mortar is what
correct.
it feels like. It's just it's so staid.
Yeah, but and there are other ways, right? So you say, well, once a quarter, everybody will come together for a week,
Right.
and you could do something like that, or
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, there are other ways to solve for that human connection for sure. But yeah, I think that probably is, and I feel like that is a better model for women as well, and a better model for the planet because I look back the hours I spent commuting, and I know
And
I
flying.
did to the planet. Yeah, and flying and yes, and the time when
Yep.
maybe I could have used a lot of the time to be with my son, for example,
Yep.
or do other things. But yeah.
Okay, so you go from working at, these large companies and now you're, rolling your sleeves up and you have such a big vision, which is lucky us that you have this really bold vision. How do you lead when you've got, this big bold vision and resources are tight and stakes feel kind of personal because it's like it's your baby. It's this idea you really want to put it to work. So it's kind of like, how do you lead when you've got champagne taste, but a beer budget and a whole lot of heart all intermixed to one recipe?
Yeah, I think you said something that's interesting is the mission, right? So the
Yeah.
mission that we are on has been one where I've had so many incredible people wanting to be part of this journey. You mentioned Jackie Zehner, for
Yeah.
example. And there's so many others, right? I mean, of course, Jackie is really important one in many ways, but we've also had an incredible team that is just so driven by the mission. And it's not
Sure.
what we're trying to do is so unique, but what is unique is that never have we really thought about bringing the gender agenda and technology together, right?
Right.
That is what folks find super interesting. So, in some ways, you're right. Life is not always about dollars and cents because humans sometimes are really motivated by the purpose and what they can do for you and how they can be part of something that perhaps could be a legacy for them. And so, I've been very fortunate in the end, I would have to say, yes, dollars and cents, and my investors who have come in and really, believe
Right.
this was a PowerPoint. Wow. Yeah. I'm very, very blessed and grateful to them. But really, it has to do with that. Yes. When you said like champagne and beer, that has to do with dollars and cents. But no,
Right. Exactly.
they've had the champagne with the champagne people who, they can give me 10 hours of their life, let's just say, but that's
Yep.
worth a fortune. But
Yes.
they provide, they've given me their expertise or experience or connected me to people, right? Or open doors for me, right? That social capital, it's been so much more bigger than any financial capital I could have had in many ways.
Yeah. Because the more that I've sort of introduced myself more and more to Uplevel, what I also am realizing is, and we'll talk specifically a bit more about it shortly, but it's not only this really interesting sort of gender powered, data informed AI for good example, but it's also, frankly, it's also a new way of the way you describe your leadership of actually running a company. And it's a terrific model for both of those things. So now we're going to shift a little bit into the tech, and then we'll get to really kind of do a deep dive into up level. But data driven, yay! And then you've also got, as you talked about, that just seems counterintuitive me to do this. So do you see a tension between data driven insights and human intuition, or are they more kind of like partners that move with each other if you get out of their way?
If you just think about generative AI and you ask a question and you get a response, what is that? Your query is data that's going into that system. The response that's coming out of out of the whatever tool you're using is also data that's coming back at you, right? So
Right.
data is not always numbers. It can, in this case, right, it's text. But don't just take it as gospel. This is where the human intuition and judgment and critical thinking and logical thinking and analytical thinking is super
Yeah.
important, because you still need to go and look at the response and see if this makes sense. Is this, you need to figure out how to validate it. You use your judgment to go, huh, yeah, that sounds about right, or doesn't sound right. Data is only as good, or data informed decisions is only as good as the quality of the data also going into the systems, right?
Yeah.
So then there could be lots of data quality issues, not enough data, broken data, you know, not necessarily the most relevant data that you need for the particular application. So that's where the human brain has to assess that.
Exactly. So, okay, because I just think it's a really terrific thing, and really it's built around this whole idea of advancing women through AI and community, and it's purpose driven, and it's this powerful tech platform sort of built for, together with the community. Talk a little bit about all of that.
Well, you know, in some ways, I think what we're trying to do is really turbocharge the work of millions of women that are doing this anyway, which is women are working across so many different areas to change the discourse around, let's say, whether it's women in climate, reproductive rights, pay gap, leadership gap, policies, right? There's so many topics. Millions of women are employed and have given their lives to this. So that's, but now let's look at technology. Technology
Right.
has never been built for us. There's nobody who's rolling out of bed going, I wonder how this works out for women.
True.
Right? Okay. And right. So, and we also know, because of how where big tech is today, so many women are fleeing many of these platforms because these platforms have become uber sexist and misogynist and all of the above.
Yep.
But if you really want to further the agenda of all these millions of women who are doing all this good work, where is their technology partner? Can you imagine going into any company today, right, in corporate America, and them not have tech? Like, tech is who is part of our toolkit, but this really technology was never built going. we should build it through a female forward lens. And that is
Right.
really what Uplevyl does. So today, like I said, but technology needs algorithms. I mean, we are AI first because, we started 5 years ago or 4 years ago.
Right.
And so you need the gender data sets that like I said, we built, but that gender data set is only one ring of the entire data stack. Eventually, it would be great to aggregate all the gender data we have in one place so that women can then access that data set for their different applications that they want to build, right? So that there is this truly shared resource. I mean, and that when I say gender data set, what is that? That is a collective brain trust of us women. Right?
Yep.
And today, what is happening is that data is being extracted and exploited by the big tech for advertising dollars. So that's one. Two is the ethos of when we say female forward. A big ethos is in data minimalism is at the center, at the forefront. It's not something we slap on later on. It's in our DNA. It's how we build. The first line of code we write is written from that perspective to protect in our members, right? And when I say our members, is the members of those amazing women's organizations, whether they're in, like I said, corporates or nonprofits or
Right.
professional women's networks, etc. And then today we have, three, I would say, so we have a multi-tenancy architecture. What that means is think of it like a condominium complex. And this is why, because we women collaborate. So when I say again, we're female forward, well, our tech has to reflect that. And how does it reflect that? Because I wanted a technology platform whereby organizations could have their own condos, but they can also connect and share across those condos and share their resources and be, much more smarter. And not only do we then have a gender data set that is reflective of our collective brain trust, but we can also dynamically and actively share our resources. And so we have one product today that we just launched in January, which is called Up. And Up is think like sort of Twitter, X, Blue Sky, but for women. And so that is now in its first phase, and we're still building out features as fast as we can. Then we also have the hubs, and these are the hubs to house the various organizations, communities where they want to convene their women. And I'll come to that particular application here in a second. And then, the third one was really born from a place of recognizing after speaking at many different events, women coming after the event and having these conversations with me around trusting AI and the fear of AI. And yes, there are many courses out there, but they're dry, they're boring, they're not exactly
Accessible.
accessible, right? And so she's been with me from the very, very beginning and really helped us to design this accelerator, which is a 8-module program to really help women give a holistic understanding of AI.
Ah,
AI. How do I show up as a digital leader? How do I work in a team that is transforming today? Today, our team could be humans and digital colleagues.
this is the thing. Yeah.
Yes, it's really shifting, right? So you have to shift your leadership style. Earlier you asked me that that's another big shift that has happened, right? And then how do I think about redesigning processes? What does AI and ethics mean? What are the risks? And I don't mean like just the internal risks and biases, but also cyber risks, because when one thing, when you actually have data all scattered across a company, it actually is not, a better thing from a cyber perspective. But when you imagine you pull all that data together in one place, you've just created a huge concentration risk of data, right? Understanding that. So we really have put a curriculum together. And then it's not only just, come in and listen to the webinar and have a nice day. It's all the other modalities, right? So hands-on use cases, different kinds of prompts, books, movies, podcasts. So just a really interesting toolkit for each module as well, so that each one of us learns differently, and being able to deliver it, same topic, but delivered in different modalities as well.
Yeah, I worked with George Lucas Education Foundation, and that was the whole thing, was really sort of opening the world up to this idea that there are at least 6 different ways that people, you know, learn. And also for those who don't normally learn one way, it actually kind of activates your brain to
Right.
receive the information in different ways. So it makes you more of a systemic thinker as opposed to sort of Newtonian.
Yes, that's right. That's
Right?
right.
So, what are the red flags people need to avoid? Like you just said, you've got to really be aware that, oh my gosh, on the one hand, old school, you want to collect all your data in one place, but that just opens you up to such vulnerability. I mean, are there other red flags to avoid?
Yeah, I mean, you before you just aggregate the data, you need to look at that historical data and understand. So, especially if you're using data for decisioning, right?
Yeah.
Let's say you're using data for lending purposes. And historically, that data set included, even if you changed policies later on down the road, but if that historical data set included where it was discriminatory or it declined certain race or certain gender.
Yeah.
Well, and if that's the data set that's going to fuel your algorithms, then guess what's going to happen on the predictive analytics side, right? So that is when I say ethical AI, that's a big part of it is what is in the what is the, sorry, in the data set that's training those algorithms.
Yeah. And see, no one talks about it from that angle.
That's right.
It's more outcome oriented as
Correct.
opposed to input that's going to lead to that output. Because you're right. It seems like it's human because it takes it back to the root, the origin issue.
That's right. That's right. And so, we are talking about, let's say, the foundational models, right? ChatGPT, Gemini, Llama, right? These are the big foundational models we have, and they were primarily trained on the data on the internet, maybe in Google's case, search, maybe in Llama's case, all the Facebook X Explorer data. But
Right.
regardless, that is the date. But having said that, I always say there are two sides to that coin. One is that algorithm itself that has this ability to predict and put one word after another word after another word, that is such a massive breakthrough, and the applications is going to have is going to be huge in a good way.
Yep.
Flip side of that, though, is that it also took all the data off the internet, and the internet reflects our society, right? Now it's billions, let's say 5 to 700 billions of tokens, and tokens is the smallest unit of data that you could use. There's like call it stringing 6 to 8 words is probably a token, and so it's cleaning that would is impossible.
Ugh.
Right. Where do you begin? There's all these user generated content, machine generated content, published content that would cost us billions and billions of dollars, right? But
Yeah.
like I said, but you needed those kind of data set to train the algorithm.
Right.
But it also happened that we're also using the data set for creating content. And this
Right.
is we need to be aware and be thoughtful how we're using those. So what's happening now is people are using the computational models from a lot of these large organizations, but pointing it to their data set, which is great, right? As long as you've really made sure that your data set is cleansed. And this is where a lot of new jobs are going to emerge, by the way.
Right? And I can tell you people were thinking, "Oh, yeah, be a prompt manager." That's gonna be nothing. What you're talking about, that's sadly talking about job security.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. Okay, because, it's not like data is static, right? Even you and I talking right now, we are creating data.
Right. Exactly. So, I've gotta ask, we were kind of talking a little bit about, "Oh, yeah, now you might be managing people and bots."
Yeah.
So and I sit there and I think about that because, we all have issues working intergenerationally, everyone going up or going down, there's challenges, whatever. Have you ever managed a bot yet?
Well, we do. I mean, this is one of the things people ask us, how Uplevel is so lean in many ways. And actually, we are at the forefront of what is happening today is
Right.
we only use humans when we really need to use humans. And then we use all kinds of tools and bots where we really don't need a human. So, like for example, doing a lot of our quality work, like
Right.
going, before we publish our code, basically to go through the quality of the code, right? Like, so we use a lot of bots. What's interesting too about these tools is we haven't implemented that yet, but imagine that your colleagues are also these digital colleagues and they give you a 360 at the year end. These colleagues don't forget anything. They're not designed. They work 24/7. They have a memory.
Yeah, it's
And so
evergreen, always.
evergreen always. Right, which is very really different than when I have to do a 360 for somebody. I have to go back and remember all my interactions, or because I'm not sitting there writing all day long every single interaction I had with my colleagues, right? So it really changes the dynamics too in terms of the workplace.
I would think so. Both I was talking to a friend with regards to future of work about how it actually also sort of can flatten an organization and changes a lot of those hierarchical challenges. But the other thing that just struck me when you were talking about never forgets is this notion of it'll really impact feedback
Yeah.
a lot,
Yeah.
which throughout, the history of work has always been such a big issue for people to just receive feedback and being able to counter it. But something like this, they'll have all the data right there.
Yeah. I mean, as a as software engineers, right? We get a report right then and there that says
Yep.
this code was great. This not right. You can see it, as opposed to back in the day, your supervisor would take a look at it, or somebody else, or you had a
Right.
peer reviews. Well, but so that's what I'm saying. So today, our peer review is actually done by another digital colleague.
Right. 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 Right.
Second, literally in seconds.
And it can impersonalize a lot of it. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
It
That's
makes
right.
that piece makes it so much more just
Yeah.
factual, which I'm completely comfortable. I mean, that I think to me makes a lot of sense. So
Yeah.
explain for everybody a little bit about how they can participate or get involved, because I think it's really interesting how you're building out the different hubs and then
Yeah. Download Uplevel Social and you can join Up. And Up is, like I said, the Twitter for women. And then the other product is more B2B. Today, when you have a women's communities, like I said earlier, there is a lot of time, money, and energy spent on human labor plus a plethora of tools, which creates a lot of inefficiencies and costs. And you're trying to build out of these communities. You want to acquire them, you want to retain them, you want to grow. You need to come up with a business model. You need to figure out how you can whether it's a subscription model or it's donor based, etc. But you need the data to show the value proposition of what you're doing. And so this is where, like I said, what we are working towards is being able to provide technology to women so that they basically could be sleeping and the communities are growing, right? So that you like download the Uplevel Hub and you get two digital employees, like basically are the agents, to be your community manager and to be your operations analyst. And they, between the two of them, they figure out everything. And within the hubs, you have the ability for people to discover and connect and network, and you have the ability to get highly personalized resources, either our content or your content that you want to publish in a video format or an audio format or text. We also have our own generative AI tool called Uplevel Genie. So you can ask Genie any questions, and Genie will now, today provide you responses, but the next release should be able to provide you with video suggestions and book suggestions and people you can connect. The whole idea is that Jeannie is supposed to be this wise woman, just like no different if I had this conversation with you, Kate, and be like, well, can you help me with this? And you would be, well, here is my advice. And let me connect you with three other women. And did you read this book? And oh, did you watch the film? And that was a great podcast, Shubhi. Like that conversation we have is
yep.
exactly how Genie's been designed. After thousands and thousands and thousands of these kind of interactions is what Genie has been trained on, so that Genie can be that wise woman to help women.
which is fantastic. Along those lines, in terms of, asking a genie or asking someone for help, what do you think, what are women asking for right now that they weren't 5 years ago? And and what does that tell you about where we're headed? I think it'll be really interesting with regards to Uplevyl too, because it stands the opportunity to me to be sort of a shine a light, if you will, and a beacon for what's coming up with
Yeah, I can
women.
give you a few data points. One is, as we built out the accelerator and we reached out to women, and maybe I would, a few hundred women that responded to this data set. The number one thing that was on there was, how do I stay relevant in this
Ah,
AI age? Really, I think a big question, top of mind for a lot of women. Now, why? And I wonder if that is because, well, we have a lot of data that says 300 million or so women will lose jobs, but at the same time, there are going to be new jobs that are going to be emerging that we haven't even thought of. So, yeah, very valid question. And then the jobs, by the way, that today the low hanging fruit that are perfect for automation happen to be a lot of operations kind of roles or administrative kind of roles, and those tend to be dominated by women. So right, so I can understand the concern and worry around, how do I stay relevant. So I
yeah.
think that is one thing. But second is, also recognize they do need the technology, but the present platforms are not helping us, serving their needs. And so, again, if you go to the Uplevel website, you will see that, there was a survey that was done this past summer, and so many women, there's been a big exodus of women off a lot of these different platforms because they can't just be themselves, or you're on this platform, but you can't be active. You're just a passive. So you're just scrolling passively, so your voices are automatically silenced and muted.
Exactly. And you were also, and that's where honestly AI can really make that difference. You were sharing that stat. Would you share it with everyone else about, is it something like only 30% or 34% of women are using
Oh,
AI?
yeah. So today, and that gap, by the way, and I'm only talking about the generative AI piece of the
Yeah.
equation.
Okay.
So that gap is actually widening, because today there's only about 37% or so women are using generative AI, and then there's about 50% or more of men, right? And there's also, I think, if you unpack that data, and I really want to do more of this work, is men, it appears like, are really also using it more from a work perspective and professional perspective, versus we might be using it more from a personal perspective, like, "Can
Right.
you help me figure out, whatever it might be, travel or but more, but actually using it in those applications in the workplace is going to be even more stronger if we can. That's a generative AI piece of that equation. But the other, I always say that generative AI does not equal AI. AI is much broader field than that. So another big field is robotics, right? Let's just use robotics for a second, because yes, we are an aging population, and we don't have enough people. Let's say logistics is a good example. Actually, I just saw something super interesting on tiles, right? So to get people to come in and lay tile is really becoming expensive, very difficult. So there are these incredible robots that, first of all, they lay tile beautifully, far more productive. They can literally work 24/7 if you wanted to. And it's perfection, right? Because it's like, it's their
Huh.
okay, so a tile maker may lose, they lose their jobs, but a whole new set of jobs are coming up, which will be repairing those robots, maintaining those robots, right? And so we women start to think about, okay, well, what's happening in the broader AI world, and where could I insert myself in this big shift that's happening?
Right. And how can I embrace it and actually
How can
help
I embrace it?
pioneer and direct it
That's right.
and guide it?
That's
Because I also believe, with women a bit more involved, I feel the same way with media too. But with women's voices sort of guiding it, it stands a better shot, I think, out the gate to be a little bit more even-handed, or at least I'd like to think about that, and maybe celebrating not only drive and ambition, but also empathy and some of the softer really powerful attributes, I think.
Yeah. Yes, that's right. That's right.
Yeah.
And that's what we're gonna need more of, right? Is that empathy and the critical thinking and collaboration. Because now, more than ever, it's just not humans. You have to figure out how to collaborate with a digital colleague and a human colleague or lead a mixed team like that, right? And so these are really skill sets that are more innate to women.
And what you're making me think about too is if I had a team of those, it literally really helps clarify, okay, these are sort of the more, manual administrative kind of nitty-gritty tool things that it empowers people to be more human.
Exactly. In some ways, it will. It will push us to be
Yeah.
even more human than we've had, because we could rely on another human. If I knew you could pick up, but what do I do with a digital colleague?
Yeah. No, exactly. All right. So in closing, I have a question. Last question. I always ask this question. What advice would you give your younger self knowing what you know now?
Oh, there's so much I would tell this younger self for sure. And, I always, and then thinking part of it is right. I mean, right from kindergarten, it's elementary school and then middle school and then high school and then it's college and then it's this and you always feel like it's a destination, a destination. I gotta get to this destination. I gotta get to this destination. And in the end, now I feel like no, actually, there isn't essence. There is no this concept of a destination is a crazy concept because that doesn't really exist. What it is really milestones.
Yes, exactly.
Right. And I think that's how I think about building up level. Like, yes, like you said, big vision. We know what coming together, what we're gonna be able to do. But if I sat there and just thought about a destination, I would have a heck of a time waking up in the morning because it's almost would be too overwhelming, right? So to really go, no, just a small milestone. Like, what do we need to get done this week, this month? And celebrate that. And then that's it. Then we go to the next one. And that's what I would tell the younger Shubhi.
Yeah. No, it's true because then, it doesn't have to always be these huge, big and that's also how you end up getting a lot of overwhelm,
Yes. Yes.
right?
Yes. Because you get so wrapped up in the destination. You're trying to figure out, oh, okay, well, this, we're gonna like if, let's say I have a million customers and I gotta figure out how to handle a million customers and it's just like, okay, why don't we just start with the first 10 and just see if we can get the 10 going. And then we can go to the 100 and then we can go to the 1,000, right? And then so those hit those milestones and do those well. And then eventually we'll get to the million as well. But if I just sat there and I thought about solving a problem for a million people, million women, yeah,
Over before it started, like, I would run for the hills. No, it is so, so true. Well, Shubi, thank you so much. Oh my gosh, I could go on. I really look forward to watching this grow. I wanna be one of those hubs, so we'll talk about that because I think it would be a really fun thing, for the Women Advancing group and so many others. So I will do whatever I can to help support you because it really is wonderful to have a platform built for women, with women, and I mean, literally together with women and technology.
it's exactly what you said, which is what I always say. I've always thought that if we have a bigger digital divide, especially in the AI age, we're going to have even a bigger economic divide.
Yes. So this can be one way to go about that. Oh my gosh. Well, Shubi, thank you so much. I really appreciate you joining
Thank
us.
you. Thank you. It flew by.
Yeah. All right. We'll see you next time.
All right.
Oh my goodness. I could have continued that conversation for a really long time. What Shubi Rao and her team are building over at Uplevel, it's going to be such a game changer that I hate to use that trite term, but that really is what it's going to be. And the piece that I love and the reason why I'm so confident with it is that it's actually being built by a woman who comes of the tech world and is taking the things that worked and then fixing the things that didn't. And so what I realized with Uplevel is really, not only is it this female first lens platform, it's also really enabling and empowering women for doing a new way of leading, right? And I mean, so that's one takeaway. Takeaway two, okay, we all complain about managing across cultures, across time zones, across different generations. Well, we're about to get into it when we have to manage, be it a bot or humans. So that's a fascinating thing. And then the last piece I really enjoyed was this notion that the social capital is really becoming much more put to use in the building of Uplevyl and the platform and the community around it. Jobs, being on the lookout for, really doubling down on cyber risk and being someone who makes sure that you are cleaning. Being the data cleaner does not sound attractive, but I guarantee you it will be very profitable. So lots to think about, lots to be excited about moving forward, and how women like Shubhi and her team are helping women advance. So until next time, Kate Byrne, thanks very much.
Thanks for listening. May this episode inspire you to move forward. Be sure to go to iTunes, Spotify, katebyrne.co, that's KATEBYRNE.co, or wherever you listen to your podcasts, and listen to even more episodes. Here's to strong women. May we know them, may we be them, may we raise them. And be sure to meet them on the next Women Advancing. Ta till next time.